All right, amazing. Guys, my name is Jacob Koh. I'm a general partner at Superscript, which is an early-stage Web3 fund based out of Singapore and New York and seeded by Temasek. So AI and crypto, it's a hot narrative. It's something that's come up, especially over the last year or so. AI is transformative. We all know that. That's why we're here. It's going to be an indelible part of our lives. It's $200 billion in size as a market now, and it's only going to go 13x over the next 7 years. Now, given how important it's going to be in all aspects of our lives, it has to remain open for us to be able to use it, for developers to be able to build on it. And if you think about what crypto, blockchain, and Web3 does, is that it really builds community and products and protocols for the users and community. So it's really well positioned to solve that. Today, we've got the co-founders of projects operating at the intersection, at the cutting edge of AI and Web3. But before we begin, guys, we're going to poll the audience a little bit here, right? So put up your hand if you guys have used ChatGPT to make a query. OK, so that's about 50, 60% of the room. How many of the people in this room here have interacted with a blockchain like sent a transaction or a wallet? OK, that's about 40-ish%. So we've got a little bit of overlap. Let's begin, guys, by answering the question, why Web3 and AI? What is it about AI that necessitates the use of decentralized networks?
Yep, I can get started. I think these two things naturally come a little bit in conflict with each other. As we know, like AI is really leveraging data, model, and compute. And we have already found pretty great solutions in a centralized way for all of these three pieces. For example, you can just put together a really powerful compute cluster and just make it really streamlined to build this large model. And then you just need a really small but elite group of people that come up with the architecture and the recipe for AI. And lastly, for the data, you can just use some of these centralized service providers to get access to the domain experts and people who can put together data for you. So that things has been really working really well in the past 5 years and 10, which create, for example, solutions like ChatGPT. And now, when we really think about the problems or the gaps in the centralized part of the solution, I really think it's the economy part. For example, I've been always thinking any data contributors to Wikipedia, to GitHub, to Reddit, and these are all great resources for people, for OpenAI to build ChatGPT. These contributors never get properly rewarded for what they have been done in the past many years. Once ChatGPT start monetize themselves, these revenue never trace back to all of these like vast majority of the contributor. And that gap is only going to be bigger and bigger over time and also with the trend that this large language model or large model can just start replacing more and more people's jobs down the road. And this is going to happen anyway. Like when GPT-5 drops, it's going to be 3 to 4 times even better than GPT-4. So at the time, which is an inflection point that when we're thinking about AI has the capability or has the choices to really replacing people's jobs and business opportunity, what we're going to do with the rest of the people, right? There's a regulation issue, there's a legislation issue, but there's also tech infrastructure issue where I see that blockchain can be used to really build up a better provenance and attribution mechanism to really trace who has done what to the data and who has done what to the model, and all the way from the very upstream part, like the data, to the very downstream part, for example, models and applications. And as the applications start monetizing itself better and better, we can trace back every single part of the participants and give back the proper rewards and revenue sharing to them. And I think that's the right way to leverage blockchain on top of the AI infrastructure. Plus, there's a crypto incentivization as the additional economic layers that we can put to really guide people to the right thing. But there's a lot of like tricky things you have to think about that you don't want to guide people to do too much of the wrong thing before it getting right in principle.
Got it. So we've got incentivization, we've got provision of data, verifying that some of the results actually did come from the model. Do any of you guys have any thoughts about what Sean has just put up there on stage?
I think one thing that I'd like to add here is the problem of centralization in the first place. In a lot of ways, right now, we're sort of living in the 1970s era of AI, where, and I'm sure a lot of people here, some people here probably remember, in the 1970s, it was extremely difficult to get access to compute. it was extremely difficult to even use that compute for any everyday problem. It wasn't until the advent of the internet that compute became more ubiquitous and it became a lot more accessible for people. Now all of us have a tiny computer that is orders of magnitude more powerful than the computers back then. And in AI, it's almost identical to the same problem. You've got the Googles and the Metas and the Netflixes of the world and the NVIDIAs. They really own access to all of this compute. Right?
So you mentioned a few names there. I'm going to throw a stat out for the audience here. So of the generative AI models and platforms, 85% of market share right now is with large players, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. So, and if we think about the manufacturers of GPUs, 95% is NVIDIA and AMD. And then on top of that, you have people at OpenAI even questioning whether or not we should think about decentralizing some of this stack. So I'm going to throw those stats out there to see how you guys respond to that on your point of centralization.
So just to clarify, are you asking specifically what the argument is for decentralization here?
No, I'm just, what I'm trying to get across here or ask you guys is like, how do you react to that, right? Because if so much of the current services that everyone uses are owned by centralized services, it seems to be working all right for now.
It's interesting that you say that, because with centralization specifically, which was the point I was going to get into, is that right now, these companies own all the power, right? Show of hands, does anybody here know how many people are on the board of directors for OpenAI? Just throw up a number, one hand.
I think I saw one hand.
Incorrect. It was actually 3, and it just got up to 6. And in their bylaws, I'm not sure if anybody had a chance to read those when the Sam Altman fiasco happened, it literally said that if they achieve anything close to artificial general intelligence, which is sort of the holy grail of AI, then the board of directors reserves the right to decide what to do with it. And it's a bit of a scary thought, really, here, if you think about it.
Got it. Himanshu, you look like you had a thought there.
No, so I think this is just the beginning. So these numbers, there's a lot more to be done with AI. And in fact, the next phase is very interesting. If you saw the latest demos on OpenAI, right, they were showing agent talking to agent and all that. So clearly, the next phase is more interactive, strategic models. So your first question, why do we need blockchains? We covered most of it. I'll add 2 more points to it. One is the technical scientific point, that the next generation of models which are strategic, they require data which is sort of gamified data, and blockchain is a perfect platform for collecting that kind of data, AI versus AI interaction, AI versus human interaction. The data centralized companies will also collect, but my thesis is, at least for that data collection, decentralization would be awesome, much, much better than centralization. So we can actually beat that number. That's my point. That it's not like the usage is at a certain percentage right now. There will be many, many more use cases. Everyone is just doing AI now. No one is doing anything else. Chemical engineers, textile engineers, everyone is just doing AI. So that's the first part. Second reason I'll quickly add is a sort of a socio-economic reason about why blockchain, which is another interesting thing. We want a creator-type economy for AI creators. It's needed. It's such an important thing that everyone is working only in this. Then I don't want to rent out my time. I want ownership and sort of clear participation in what I'm building. And blockchain and crypto are perfect for that. All these vibrant investment instruments are sitting to support the best projects, which can have, with AI, nice show and tell and involvement. So I think that's the socio-technical part also, socio-economic part as well. So in both these ways, I feel that there's a lot more to be done, and blockchain and decentralized AI can take over centralized.
Got it. So I think it's all well and good. All of us here, you guys are founders of Web3 and AI projects. I'm part of a Web3 fund. We are obviously leaning one side, right? But let's look at the mainstream coverage of things like Web3 and crypto. Anytime you inject crypto into something, whether it's a JPEG and a picture with crypto, you get speculative NFTs with no utility. Whether it's financial services and crypto, you get DeFi, smart contract hacks, talks of North Korea. So is AI sort of courting dangerous territory by utilizing blockchains and crypto networks? What do you think?
It depends on in what context you're pairing AI and crypto together. So I think when we talk about this question of how does AI connect to Web3, and how does Web3 connect to AI? Maybe you're asking, when AI is used alongside Web3 technologies, what are the potential risks? I think it's important to highlight, what are the use cases that people talk about with AI connecting into Web3. It depends on the AI model, but a lot of the new excitement in this space is around deep learning-based models, LLMs, and things like that. So I've seen a lot of projects that are building around how do we use things like LLMs and other types of models in various modalities to go and actually help users interact with blockchains in new ways. So an example that's starting to become more common and a lot of people are building around is, what if I could use my voice or type into a chat box what I want to do with a blockchain system? Maybe it's to generate a transaction or get recommendations about a transaction to do or something like that, and it'll execute it on your behalf. So this naturally leads to a lot of questions around, what are the risks and risk factors that happen when an AI system is starting to generate transactions on the behalf of users? Everything from, did the AI effectively represent the intent of the user correctly? It might be some sort of prompt injection or strange prompt engineering stuff that also kind of affects how a user's intent may come across. Not to mention all of the other security factors. One being, a lot of these big models are non-deterministic by nature. So how do you build some sort of deterministic trace such that you have some sort of provability or verifiability about the transactions that's actually happening? So I think there's a number of interesting issues to think about. But with that, I think there's a lot of really interesting pros and opportunities alongside that as well. And I think a lot of people are making the prediction that AI agents will become a very, very large driver of blockchain transactions in the future. So it's a very exciting area to think about personally, and certainly I think it's important to highlight the risks that you get with that opportunity.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is that focus on the actual use cases that blockchains provide, like provenance. You know for real this transaction happened, and you can tie that to an AI agent to say, yeah, this is legitimate, it's verified. OK, so there is still some skepticism in general about blockchains and crypto. I want to stay on this topic. What do you guys think it would take to encourage sort of mainstream AI developers, builders, and people to actually cross the chasm and say, hey, you know what? I want to build on that open network that's built on a blockchain network, right? I want to build my AI solution there.
Yeah, I think, to me, for the interactions between AI and Web3, there's two very interesting sort of conflict or trade-off we are doing. One is the AI utility, what I call it. Basically, the measurement is very simple, right? Just depending on the outcome of your project, how many Web2 or AI native builders and developers are actually find the results of your project useful, right? No matter it is data sets that are generated out of your workflow, or if it's the models, or even just the compute. When you compare to the Web2 centralized solution, can I find it faster, cheaper, safer, better compensated, stuff like that, right? That's what I call AI utility. And there's another part of this, the thing we're trading off is the capital and liquidity, which is the great things about Web3 compared to the Web2 AI sort of ecosystem. People find it's easier to just capitalize the resources, have a better liquidity with all of the nice ecosystem sort of community. So now the project builders of AI/crypto come in and they see these two sort of a trade-off that they have to make. And I think we see basically projects in this whole space sitting at different ends of the spectrum. We see a bunch of projects sitting more on the capitalization, the economic parts where they can get faster, capitalize, better liquidity, better user traction, but they don't have time yet to really optimize the AI utility of the projects. They might be just pushed to just like grow the user, find better reward point system, engaging the user, but at the same time, they find it hard to maintain the data quality, to keep the model usable, to really sell it to the enterprise or small, medium business, right?
OK, so I think that's a really good point. You have a trade-off right there, right? Speed, cost, utility of the AI versus the ability to access community, liquidity, people who are interested. I want to take a poll from the other three of you. Where do you think we are in that trade-off right now? Because remember, crypto is difficult to use, right? You've got wallets, it's slower, it's more costly. You know, in other fields like decentralized compute and ZK proofs, we're really not there yet, right? It's just not worth the hassle and time and pain, even though many great builders are building. Where are we with that trade-off in crypto today and AI?
I think one of the biggest problems right now with that trade-off is interpretability and understandability, right? Crypto itself is difficult for newcomers. AI is difficult for newcomers. Combining the two is an even bigger problem, right? So, and I think that's largely the industry's fault. It is our fault as founders because we are not describing what we're doing properly. We need to really hone down on documentation, on publications, on explaining what it is that we've built in a language that developers can understand, right? Not just the crypto enthusiasts that can maybe understand it. And a lot of that falls down on things like, as I mentioned, publication, and the other part here is open source, right? A lot of, really a lot of the best projects I've seen have really been open source in the first place. And a lot of the research nowadays in almost every academic sector, I can actually name off 5 papers right now that have all used open source LLMs and open source AI to actually accomplish what they were doing, everything in astronomy, physics, geology. And so these folks wouldn't have been able to do this research without the open source models. And for us, because we're powering our AI with blockchains and we're incentivizing the users and we're trying to bring in these AI developers to make it even better, we need to make sure that they understand what it is that they're building. And once they do, I think kind of the blocks will fall from there, so to speak.
Yeah, just to jump in, I think it's a great point. And one way that I would also maybe like flip the question, Jacob, that you're asking is, like for what specific use cases are people willing to pay more money for? And maybe we should focus on those. Like the fact that a Bitcoin transaction may cost $10 to send, but people still send Bitcoin transactions is really important. So I think that means that Bitcoin has a really important technology and sort of product that it brings to the market. So in the time being, before any of us can kind of get a few years along and really bring something scalable and exciting to the market, what are those use cases that we should focus on where people are willing to spend more money compared to a centralized transaction? And I think that's a really interesting way to think about the emerging use cases that we might see in this crypto AI subsector.
Yeah, so you changed the question in the middle. So, but I like your first question, though. So, because for me, the most fascinating part about crypto and blockchains is always the new economy and the socio-economic structure. And when you said that, is it hard to find people building AI and that kind of thing, right? Is there any friction in getting them to Web3 and crypto AI projects? I think it may be harder for people who are already senior at a Databricks or Google or something like that, but we should not even look at those guys. They're all lost cause. Crypto is always about very young guys, very, very new economy, people who are embracing things ground up. And I don't see any friction in that. Like in fact, that's the new economy they want to participate in. They want to own what they are building. Mm-hmm. And if you get the older guys, they will continue to scale transformers and they will continue to more TPU, more GPU. They will not do anything new, they will scale. But we want to do more new things. You want to build a foundational model for robotics to solve the things in the previous talk, then you need the new talent. And they embrace crypto. So we should target that. That's the people who will build for this, not a person who built, not the person who's scaling for Databricks.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, you're saying that Web3 founders in general are a little bit younger, a little bit more, sort of energetic perhaps. Whereas on the AI side, there's a lot of technicality to it. You have gentlemen who are, PhDs, professors, like the person that was on stage before. Let me ask you guys then, like, how many AI ML PhDs do you think it takes to make a successful AI project?
I don't think you need that many. Like, I think Mistral is a great example, right? They just need a small team of 5, 7 people. I mean, all of them get PhD to build a thing, right? So I really think the problem in the Web2 AI industry is like there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much like constraints and factors in Google and Meta that even they have the talents, they cannot put up the things to do it.
Got it. So your response is 5 to 6. Let's do a quick poll. How many?
I think as an AI PhD, I can't answer this question.
Okay.
You see, but I should say that the question should be opposite. How many can you tolerate so that you can still ship? That should be the question.
OK. In the spirit of Niraj, let me flip it slightly then, and let me ask you a question. How many AI and ML PhDs do you think you need to have a successful AI Web3 project?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I mean, really, there's different type of AI crypto projects. There's crypto for AI projects where the end goal is to build a better AI products that powered by blockchain. In that case, I think you just need to use the same amount of talents as like a typical Web2 AI companies. But in addition to that, you need blockchain experts, right?
Can I add something to that, actually?
Yeah.
I love polling people. It's actually all they do. How many here have been grad students in the past? Just show of hands. Oh, 1, 2, 3, a few folks. OK, so grad student life is very ungratifying. And I feel like for a lot of people, having access, even if they're AI/ML master students or AI/ML PhD students, having access to the sort of compute that a blockchain would give you or an AI crypto blockchain project would give you is actually going to be extremely useful, either if it is for research purposes or even for your own benefit, right? Because that's the one difference we have from different Web2 companies is that you can actually benefit directly from it, as opposed to working in a company or working for, say, a professor or working for whatever for like a regular kind of income in a sense.
I think if I can just quickly add to that, just one point I want to add on a serious note about this AI PhD. I think the way PhD is done needs to change completely. That's another thing AI has shown. This is standard deep thing about something which will be 50-year-old, and you will catch up with things which were in 90s in your 5 years, is not working out anymore. You look at conferences like NeurIPS and all the main conferences, it's become a mess. It's crazy to even follow what is important, what not important. So in fact, the industry has changed how the PhD needs to be done now in AI.
Actually, there is one more point to add here, it's kind of building on yours. One of the biggest problems in academia right now is verification. And that's something that a blockchain can do marvelously, right? You know, a lot of companies that we will not name have been caught basically either reviewing their own papers or basically making sure that some papers get blocked so they can publish their own work. And that's happened quite a few times. It's happened to me personally. It's just a rampant problem in academia, right? Where if you use things like AI crypto projects where intelligence is measuring intelligence, you can basically really put your model where your mouth is, right? It's not up, there's no human bias anymore. There's no worries that, OK, maybe if I publish this in time or whatever, that doesn't exist anymore. It's all done on the blockchain, right?
Yep.
And the interesting part is, I'm not sure if anybody here has heard of papers with code. And a lot of the top conferences in the world now, they're enforcing papers with code. You have to submit your code with your paper to actually prove you actually have done it. And it seems like a really manual way to just verify something.
That's funny. I like how you guys have flipped it so that building on blockchain actually is somewhat presented as a more practical way of implementing AI, which is probably the last thing I thought someone would say about crypto or Web3. OK, so now let's just move into one more step of detail, right? What are these guys building, and where does it fit in the AI tech stack? So let's think about how the AI tech stack works at the moment. You've got GPU and compute resources, right? You've got data labeling, preparing the data that goes into models. You've got the actual training of the models. You've got the inferences that those models generate. You've got verifiability, which has been mentioned several times, of those outputs. And then you've got the application layer, where the end user interacts with the models, like sitting on ChatGPT. In this tech stack, right, where do you guys, where is the decentralized protocol you're building fit? And maybe Niraj will start with you.
So what Ritual does is we are a execution layer for building AI-enabled smart contracts. So what that means is, today, if you're a smart contract developer and you want to integrate AI into your blockchain product in some way, it's fairly difficult to do. It's getting better day by day, but it's still not the easiest thing in the world. So we have built a series of sort of programs in an execution layer that allow you to say call a certain model with certain features and input. Maybe you're talking to Llama 3 or something like that. And our systems will coordinate the request of that information, the compute, and then the response back, to which you can then use it inside of your application in some way. Maybe you're generating an NFT, or you're taking it and using it inside of another application. So we're sort of a platform that manages these different pieces end to end. And really, we're very focused on the kind of Web3 first market. It's a pretty small market today, but I think it's growing quite rapidly. And so we aim to be sort of an experimentation layer to see what types of applications people build on top of it.
So it's almost like a network coordination of AI services for Web3 companies to try and plug in and use AI, basically. All right, Himanshu, take it away, because Sentient is a little bit mysterious. There's not much information about you guys.
Yeah, we are the youngest of all the guys sitting here in terms of the startup. Yeah, so we are basically building a platform where OpenAGI can be built, where all these campaigns for collecting different kind of data can be executed, and as Sean was saying, people can be rewarded. The key technical piece that we are solving in that is once you have these powerful models, how can you actually let those powerful models exist and allow people to deploy them in their local environment? How can you let them take the file away and yet track their usage? So we are a research-first company. I mean, I'm also a professor, and two of the co-founders are professors. So basically, the key technology we are building is that you can take the file, the model file, run it in your local environment, but we can track its usage through the protocol. Because once we can do that, then we can always reward the contributors. There have been some fascinating campaigns run by universities like Datacomp, which Sean doesn't like so much maybe, but which have shown that one can collect data from contributors. This data collection and models are no longer separated.
Got it.
This hierarchy that first data comes and then model comes is no longer true. Both happen at the same time, and this publicly contributed models and data sets are now common. Hugging Face also released something recently.
So I'm seeing a bit of a common thread here. It's about accessing models and verifying that that's the case. What about yourself on Bittensor?
Yeah, so Bittensor effectively is almost at the orchestration layer of things.
Okay. Another network.
Yeah, it's effectively a protocol. It's a peer-to-peer protocol that incentivizes the production of really any computational commodity that has to do with intelligence, everything from inference to compute to storage to training. And the idea here is that people compete with their peers. And really, they're trying to create the best possible service or model, in effect, to try to earn the most reward as a result. And the idea being that if you perform better, whether that is through inference, your model performs better than somebody else's, or through training, your model trains better than someone else's, or even if you provide better compute, et cetera, than your peers, then you are rewarded by the blockchain as a result.
OK, got it. Now, what about Sahara, Sean?
Yeah, what really concerns Sahara as our funding thesis is the fact that vast majority of the participants in the AI economy doesn't get fair compensation. So Sahara is building a platform that's really built for AI that prioritizes the AI access sovereignty and really emphasizing the equity and accessibility of the AI access, including data set and model. And the way we're thinking about it is really to involve every single participant into the economy by using the Sahara blockchains to ensure on-chain attribution, the revenue sharing, and then the provenance. Like you know exactly who is the co-owner of the data sets and then the model, and how the data set owner become part of the model owner when the data sets were used as part of the training set for building a model, and down the road when the model was used to build an application.
Yep. So there's a real common theme here, guys. All of them are building networks. They're all about accessibility, ensuring that users and communities can access these models, that they are, in fact, verified, right? Now, in that AI tech stack, are there areas where it doesn't make sense to be building on blockchain, right? GPU, compute, and resources, training models, the end application. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can start first. I've been always complaining about the invisibility of the blockchain for AI projects in the past couple months. So I will start with the number one example I like to say. I think the decentralized compute network of GPU is probably a little bit far-reaching from what we're getting now. Majorly is because just the fact that individuals connect through the network using internet is just far from being usable on a technical side.
Right, so these are like projects like Jensen or IONET.
There's a bunch of projects basically like IO.NET they're trying to build. I think IO.NET is more like a sort of composition of different things, right? So you have the GPU marketplace, which I personally really like. I think there's a great need for having a marketplace that give people transparency about who have the idle GPU compute, like from those small, medium data centers. But the idea of using the GPU in your laptop or the GPUs on your desktop and then connect them together to train a Llama model, I think it's a bit far-reaching, but we'll get to there when the internet speed is really good enough.
That's a great answer, given who's sponsoring the stage and the event there.
Ahmed, yeah, I'm here.
A great plug for them. Any publicity is good. But jokes aside, what else do you guys think? Like, what does not make sense to build on a blockchain from the AI side?
I think really it's very application specific. I think you touched on this a little bit, Sean. And that really depends on what it is you're trying to build. Right? So, I think we're all here in tech. We all know there's no silver bullet solution to anything. Everything has a very specific wrench, a very specific torque, a very specific screwdriver for it. And sort of to act like something has basically effectively a Swiss knife for every single problem, that doesn't really exist. So when it comes down to, let's say, one easy example is latency, right? If your AI project is extremely latency sensitive, it might not make sense to build it on a crypto blockchain. Or maybe it might not make sense to build it on a blockchain in the traditional sense. You might have to have a better sense of orchestration, a better sense of setup to actually be able to compensate for this difference, right? And that kind of brings to mind things like critical systems and stuff, right? Those are more directly built on chip for a lot of problems. So yeah, I think that's effectively it.
Got it. Himanshu?
I think everything makes sense. Some things are harder and some are not. What is crypto if not completely crazy in its ambition for technology? I don't think I love that about crypto and blockchain. I think all of it makes sense, and some of them are more ambitious. For example, what Sean is saying, I think it will, once the agent world is unleashed, like WWDC is around the corner now, right? So it will again pick up. Then all the small compute also makes sense for collecting agent interaction data. All of it will make sense. I am always looking for crazy ideas in crypto, the kind of problems Neelesh was describing, going to the depth of what can be verified, what cannot be verified. When I thought about that problem, it made me revise all my first 2 years of computer science education, just going over the track of what execution happens. So I think all of it makes sense. Some are harder, some are less hard. That's all.
I think those are all great answers, and maybe I'll answer a different question because
I love it. You're the flipper. You switch the context up. I love it.
Maybe relevant to people in the audience who's building an AI crypto. If we take like what's underrated, what's overrated, or what's consensus contrarian, I think I think a lot of the different pieces of the AI crypto infrastructure stack are starting to get a lot more crowded. Verifiability solutions is getting a lot more crowded. Inference solutions is getting a lot more crowded. So I would push people to think about what are interesting consumer use cases of AI crypto, because I think there's a ton. Building new types of NFT marketplaces, building new ways to interact with blockchains, new ways to fix and improve DeFi. There's a lot of really, really cool ways to hopefully use AI to go and win a new category or help compete in an existing category. So I would urge people to go look at that space. A lot of the AI crypto consumer companies that I have looked at, some of which are building on Ritual, are getting pretty interesting traction. In the span of even under a year, some of these companies are getting hundreds of thousands of users using their applications. And I think this is happening in the regular AI space as well. People just want to use AI. It's such a new, interesting, different thing than what we've had the past 5 years in consumer technology. And if you can find an interesting spin or take on how to take that and build it into a sort of use case or customer-specific product, there's a lot of really exciting blue ocean to go think about.
Now, one of the things that always comes up when we talk about blockchains and networks are tokens. Because tokens are the mechanism by which you incentivize people to do things. You validate the Bitcoin network, you get some tokens. Do you think these financial incentives could pose a threat to what you are building? Because at the end of the day, no one can control what people do with tokens. You can have mass speculation. People can create liquidity markets on the side in crypto. Could that undermine what you guys are building, and the underlying product that you are coordinating for?
Yep. I mean, it definitely can. I think it takes building good token economics into a system to hopefully avoid a lot of those issues. Because in some ways, tokens are, it's fuel for a fire. It helps accelerate network effects in a system that you're building. And we've seen this work in so many different types of businesses. Binance went from being a no-name exchange to being the biggest exchange in the world within 1 year in 2017. And really, BNB was at the center of all of that. And we've seen this in various different ecosystems, whether it's in the layer 2 space or restaking, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to take some really smart, intelligent, new token design patterns. And everyone here on the stage has been thinking about this pretty actively in ways that, how do you incentivize the proper introduction of new intelligence into a system or new data, or creating a marketplace for compute or verifiability or privacy. So we're starting to see some emerging new patterns, some which borrowed from existing projects we've seen over the past couple of cycles, and then some that will be AI specific and AI native. We haven't seen a ton yet, but I think we're going to see a lot more over the next 1 year, especially as we see more capital, more people, more researchers starting to look at this space.
I might edit this question slightly, and this one is for you as well, Ala, because Bittensor is one of the few protocols that's live already. It's got a token trading. The FDV of it is $8 billion, right? And what's circulating in the market is maybe closer to 2.5. Is the network worth that much, right? Can you control that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that at Bittensor, I think for anybody who's familiar, we're very, very firm believers in markets. Markets really control everything, and really it's up to what the market decides. I kind of like what Niraj has been doing all night, all morning. He's kind of been posing questions back. So I'm going to do the same thing. OpenAI's revenue for the last year was about $2 billion, whereas the total emissions from Bittensor is also about 1.8 to 2 billion for the last year. And that really indicates that, given that Bittensor is really a project that's largely unknown outside of crypto circles, for it to have that sort of valuation means that there is demand for such a thing, right? Especially with the Sam Altman fiasco from last year, people started searching for new and interesting different projects that don't rely on such centralization of people. And so I think over time, projects like Bittensor, projects like Ritual, projects like Sentient or Sahara, they're going to keep growing, and they're going to keep kind of in a sense, attracting a lot of talent. And with that talent comes higher FDVs, higher outputs, and more quality products. And they will absolutely catch up to the demand.
Awesome. So I'm going to finish on a positive note here, guys. What is one use case each of you are excited about that you think people will come to build on your Web3 AI protocol?
Yeah, for Sahara, we really believe a transparent and open data marketplace. It's really a strong use case to pull together a lot of expertise and a lot of proprietary knowledge contributors to come to the platform, build a data sets, become the shareholder of the data sets, which we're going to use to support a lot of ecosystem AI developers and builders, and also become part of the shareholder to take the revenue sharing down the road with that. And then the token incentivization is a great add-on on top of the typical fiat sort of transactions for the data contributors.
What about Ritual?
One use case I'm broadly pretty excited about is seeing the creation of Web3-enabled agents to basically execute tasks on the behalf of users, whether they explicitly program them or not. I think we're going to see a very interesting design space open up here over the next couple of years. Whether it's simple things like agents going and doing some sort of basic transaction recommendation on top of maybe your past history, all the way to very, very complex new types of agent behavior, where we see maybe agents interacting with each other, or we see agents with really complex tasks at hand. Maybe it's accumulate as much Ethereum as possible. That's the goal of the DAO. That sort of backs the agent, and it has to go and actually do that. I think that's going to get really interesting and really wacky. And a couple questions ago, I mentioned, I think a lot of people are predicting that agents will become a very large driver of blockchain transactions, which I would agree with. And so this is a place that, outside of Ritual itself, I'm just really excited to see more people building in.
Got it. Bittensor's got a few examples.
Yeah, sure. Actually, my favorite thing that's emerging on the network now, and that's actually development for the last month or so, is a lot of what we call public goods services. So things like defect detections, right? How do you incentivize people to run a whole boatload of models and sort of contribute, try to beat each other to detect a defect generation in the first place? I think that sort of thing is really when when people talk about projects like Bittensor or others in the space, those are really going to go a long way to convince the average user that, hey, this is actually contributing a common good, right? It's not just creating AI for the sake of creating AI in the first place. I think there's, I think we're out of time. There's a boatload of other sort of things that are being built in the same manner.
Yep. And Himanshu?
Yeah, so I'm very keen to see this more strategic models evolving, and even the variants of the existing ones extended to more strategic variants through a platform, and looking forward to having these foundational models which are owned by community because they contributed to foundational model itself. That's one thing Sentient is very keen on bringing out.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, these guys are the co-founders building some of the most exciting Web3 and AI protocols. It's about accessibility. It's about verification and provenance. It's about empowering users to be able to still be able to use this life-changing technology. Please give them a warm round of applause.